Before we get started, I want to remind you this weekend, in fact, this Friday, all the way through Sunday, Heritage Life Skills in Waynesville, North Carolina. We're going to be there, but more importantly, Dr. William Forstchen's going to be there. You know, the guy that wrote 1 Second After. Couldn't be more timely. All right, let's get down to brass tacks. Over here, we have a compost pile that's in the process, basically the materials. And we have all of it in here. You can see some of the steam coming up off of there. This is ultimately going to be compost. Now, here we are down in the part of the compost barn where we have different piles in varying degrees of breaking down. We got one right here that turned out most recently. This one turned out right before that. Over here is my best stuff so far. Now, this is BioComplete. It has everything it needs, and in fact, it has more than the numbers. The only thing that we need to do in this particular pile is to basically let the fungi come together a little bit more than what it is. You see it's nice and crumbly, very, very wonderful. Has that dark, rich chocolate, 70% cocoa color in accordance with what Dr. Elaine Ingham teaches. This stuff we tested, and it is off the meat wagon. High numbers of everything, of the things we really want, and really none of the things we don't want, like ciliates and stuff like that. So, we're going to show you how you can take a little bit of compost like this and make it go a long way in extraordinary ways. So in this bucket, I got some of that bomb compost I was just telling you about. Got a little 400 micron mesh bag here. And as you can see, I've already been using it. And over here, I have a bucket full of water that's at ambient temperature. Okay, what am I going to do? Now, let's say you made some really good compost. You had it tested, you know it's good, it has all the life in it that you should want, but you don't have enough of it to cover acres and acres and acres of property. Well, if you do this right, you can take, if it's really good stuff, you can cover an entire acre with 1 gallon, but you'll have to go through a series of processes. I'm going to show you how I do it. And honestly, you want to give full credit to Dr. Ingham and go check out the Soil Food Web if you want to know what we've learned. And also, we're doing something of a tutorial over there on Patreon if you'd like to know how we do that as well. So here's how it's going down. This compost is off the meat wagon. I'm going to throw some up in here. Okay. And now it's really this simple. Now, what we are making today is extract. There is a difference. This is one of the many things I learned. There's a difference between extract and tea, compost tea. The extract, we're basically extracting the organisms from that compost and all the food it needs pretty much right here into this water. So all we're going to do at first, kind of dunk it a little bit, get this stuff off my hands, and all I'm going to do is squeeze some of the water through that. Just like so. And then here's the little method I pretty much devised. Dunk it for another 5 times. Squeeze the water through there. You're not squishing it and you're not grinding. You don't want to tear up those organisms. So as I'm going through here, I'm basically squeezing it through a few more times. Now, the reason why this water was dark to begin with is because I've already done this process 3 times already. So I'm really making this a powerful, powerful batch of basically organisms that are about to get out here and go to work for us. So this is one of those many ways in which we can take a little bit of stuff and make it go a very long way. And of course, we'll bring you for the ride on that as well. Okay, I'm gonna squeeze it one last time. This whole process basically takes about 30 seconds. Well, for me, this whole process should take anywhere between 30 seconds to a minute. But what's critical is that, yes, you do have a 400 micron bag because you need to be able to have some of the larger organisms, like some of the fungi strands and stuff like that, to be able to get through that bag into the water. That's critical. Now, the difference between the extract, which is what we're making right now, and the tea is that the tea is going to be more of a foliar spray. We want to reproduce organisms, and when we do, it creates a very sticky, tacky substance when they're in that process. So when you spray it on, for example, just did this, believe it or not, this peach tree, people are going to think I'm crazy, but it's only 2 years old. I just sprayed this one with the tea the other day. Check this out, 2-year-old tree, and look at that. Peaches up there right now. off and running. So we use that as a foliar spray. So basically all of the sites on this tree, when we use a tea, not an extract, the tea, they're basically taking up all the sites, all the surfaces on that leaf, so the bad guys can't get in there. So they're basically saying to the bad guys the same thing they said to Forrest Gump: can't sit here. So it's all taken over by my good guys. That's exactly what we want. So when we're using what we're using today, it is of critical importance that we don't make a tea, because we're putting this down in the pasture. We're making an extract. We need something that's gonna, these microbes are all sitting in there on their little buses and whatever else, and the water is the means in which they do it. We're gonna get it out into the pasture and let it soak in for the benefit of the soil, which means for the benefit of the grasses and the benefit ultimately of our animals. So that's what we're going to do here in a minute, but we got a few more steps. So let's talk about the next part of the process. What you're looking at here is a brew tank. I'm not going to recommend it. I'm not going to tell you the brand or anything like that, because it ain't a good one. I'll be honest with you. And the part that makes it not good is the inability to regulate the amount of air that's going to fly up through this thing. So essentially, you have an air pump right here. There are some elements of it that are good design where it, so it doesn't backfill into that and then destroy the pump. There's some aspects that are good, but one thing that was really not thought through was the ability to control the amount of air going through. Because what I don't want, if I'm going to do this the classic way, what I do not want is anything more than 80 to 100 psi of air going through that bag, because it's going to do more harm than good. So that's another thing altogether. So what you could do, if you're going to leave your bag in here, you could basically clip it here. I'm not going to go through all the process of what that entails, but basically you could clip it here, let it go for a specified period of time, test it, look under a microscope and see if you got the microbiology that you want. Now, in this case, I did it by hand, which is more efficient. And I got way more in this stuff than I need to. So remember, I'm making extract, not tea. So I've done it, I've already mixed it basically in this bucket. Now, the one thing I'm not going to do is pour the entire contents of the bucket down in there, because there's this little sludge in the bottom of there, as you can see. That's fine, because I can use it for other applications. But I'm going to go ahead and get this in here. And what I'm going to do is I could basically take this stuff, and because it is so potent and powerful, 1 gallon would be more than sufficient. Michelle's already looked at this stuff under the microscope. 1 gallon would be more than sufficient to handle a single acre. But I don't ever do anything the bare bones way of doing it. But we'll show you how all that goes out. But here's what we're doing with this one. Here's what makes it special, is that I don't need to put this actually in the tank. We're good to rock and roll right now. What I am going to do is what Dr. Ingham calls setting it out with a lunch pail. I'm going to favor the fungi in this, okay? Because we have pastures that are more bacterially dominated. There's very little fungi out there. That's what we're going to focus on. So I'm going to give this thing a lunch box, as she describes, of things that are very, very beneficial to the fungi. So I'm not worried about the bacteria. Our protozoa numbers are 6 times higher than what's required, and our nematodes are 5 times higher than what's required there. So, and they're all bacterial eating, everything that we've seen under the microscope. So those guys are going to focus on eating up the bacteria, not so much the fungi. I'll go ahead and get this filled up and we'll talk about the next step. Okay, inside this little bucket with a little bit of water, I have food that is going to favor my fungus. Now, when I turn this on, you're probably not going to hear it so much, but I'm going to get it going. We're going to get some air in there. It's going to help these guys, but we are not making a tea. We are making an extract, and all we're doing is giving them something to eat on the way out. It's really not entirely necessary, but that's how we're rolling today. So let me go ahead and get it going. As you can see, that's a little bit strong. So I'm gonna add a valve on this thing to be able to regulate this. So that's why I'm not gonna recommend this. If they didn't care enough to put one on there, it tells me a little bit about the company that made it. So I'm not gonna recommend it. I'm just gonna kind of stick that on there a little bit cockeyed. It's not necessary entirely. We'll just let this go for a little while. Now, if I were to let this continue to go, if you're not monitoring this, it could go anaerobic. I don't need to get into all that. Just know that I've made an extract in the buckets, put it in here. I'm adding a little bit of air to get these guys off and running. It would take a few hours to get it hopping and popping. All I'm doing is getting everything mixed up, getting these guys, their bellies a little bit full, and we're about ready to rock and roll. Okay, well that stuff is over there brewing. This is, okay, here's what I'm talking about. Get in close. See this? These are all mushrooms that are popping up in here. This is where I've been dumping the leftover compost tea and extract, okay? We can look at other trees over here and let's see if that's happening. Not happening here. So what does that tell you? All the stuff that I've been putting over here where I've been dumping that, it's fungal dominant. And that's exactly what we want in a tree system. So this couldn't, I mean, this is a happy accident, but this is all that stuff that I don't want to put in my sprayer or anything like that. It's a little bit thick. It's still very much aerobic. I'm gonna go around. We got to trim back a little bit here, but this fig, it could use some. Put some over here on this apple. We did a little bit of chop and drop. And this pear, you get some too. So we do it all while it's aerobic and it's compost tea. I'm sorry, extract. Don't want to confuse the two. And bam, this is where all the extra goes. Now let's go on to the next step. Michelle's out here. She's got her pipette and a slide. We're going to do one last test on it to make sure this stuff is absolutely copacetic and it has the concentrations that we want. Generally, the bare minimum is about 135 micrograms each per gram of bacteria and fungus. Protozoa should be at what, 10,000? We had about 60,000 nematodes at 100 per gram, and we got 500 if I'm not, or 600 if I'm not mistaken. Like I said, fungal is what we need, but all of it ain't gonna hurt because we got the entire soil food web in here when we tested it in the bucket.
When we tested the pasture there, it was all bacterial. So really at this point, anything is gonna help.
Yeah, so she's gonna go ahead and make a test. She's gonna fill her pipette and then dump it out and then do it again. So now what's going to happen, she's going to go look at that under the microscope. I'm going to clean up this bag thoroughly. I mean, clean as a board of health. And also, all the spent compost that I have here, it's about half the volume that it was because obviously a lot of that stuff came out of it. It's now in here. So we're going to take this. It's going to get re-inoculated with the old pile. That's another story altogether. But she's going to go look at this.
That's a good guy nematode, right, Mom?
Yep, that's
Is it a
bacterial feeder, and you can tell because of the shape of the mouth. And also, like if you see this, there's a terminal bulb back here where it's got like a little pumping mechanism. That's one of the distinguishing features.
So what do we got here?
This is a fungal hypha, which is what we want. And you can tell, you can see these cross walls. I don't know if it's gonna pick it up on the camera, but let me zoom in. You can see these cross walls, and if they're evenly spaced up and down the whole hypha, that's one indication that it's a beneficial fungus. Another is the color. So this is I would say it's like a light brown. The diameter this is about 2 micrometers. And it's not like, it's got an even diameter. So it's not like lumpy or bumpy. It's about 2 micrometers, the whole length of the hypha. So those are some indications that it's a beneficial fungi.
Okay, we're to the point. This thing is done, and stick around to the end because we're going to talk about the biological assessment. Michelle's in there doing that right now, but right now it's looking fantastic. Okay, so here's why you want to be thinking twice about the brewer you buy. So right now I'm in the process of thinking about how I would change this thing and how I'm almost certainly going to redesign it. What you don't want is when this thing comes out of here, you don't want 90-degree turns. You see one here, you see one here. And the reason why is that your microorganisms, when they get pumped out of there, they're going to go splat up against the side of that 90. You want very, very slight turns. They're going to die here, they're going to die here, and they're going to die in that motor. So those are things that are poorly designed about that. Once again, the reason why you should never buy this. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but this is why you want to think about that. It's going to be easy for me to redesign it. And in fact, I'm going to basically revamp this whole thing and make it work right. So let's get down to brass tacks. Here's how I'm going to get this stuff out of here and not kill my microbes in the process. So right now, the air pump pulls in air basically from here, comes up through here. This is a good part of the design, and then goes back down. So if this thing ever stops like it is right now, it doesn't backfeed into the pump. So all I'm going to do is bust it loose here, and I'm just gonna, this is the most genteel way of getting this out of here. Now let me also say, the water that I'm using is ambient temperature, okay? That's critical, because you don't wanna be shocking or killing your organisms because they're in this, very, lukewarm water. All of a sudden they go into something that's freezing that just came out of your well. You wouldn't be happy either. Well, I don't know, these days everybody takes a cold shower. So all I'm gonna do is just basically put this thing over here. I got 50% of well water. Now, if this were city water, you'd want to hit it with some humic acid. Our water is really good here. Don't have to worry about that. And all I'm going to do, just like so. So, this stuff, we haven't seen the assessment yet, but like I said, I'm pretty sure this is well within range, if not far above it. So all we're going to do is get this filled up right now, and we'll show you how we apply it. And we'll be off and running. We got the stuff out and it's ready to rock and roll. And now we got some of the beds. This one here has to be planted, but check it out. Before I put this on, these sweet potatoes over here weren't doing nothing. The bugs were having a field day for them, and we intentionally put them in a very bad bed. Now, we tested this stuff before we did any of this stuff, and we chronicled a little bit of it right on Patreon. I kid you not, after the first application, this stuff exploded. This will technically be the second application, and this batch we got here is probably 4 times more powerful, maybe more, than the first one we put on. So right here's where I'm going to start. All right, so these are cucumbers, and they're off and running. We hit this with one, and they exploded as well. Now, here we are coming back. I want to make sure I point out, this is not a foliar spray. These guys are not making the glues necessary to stay on the leaves. We'll make something totally different for that. What I'm trying to do is get down to the soil. That's where it's at. So this stuff will actually penetrate the soil and improve everything. So this is one fantastic way of taking your compost and stretching that stuff, especially if it's really good stuff. Now, if it's not so good, you're going to have to dunk that stuff numerous times and, to do whatever you got to do to get up to the proper numbers. Okay, all the Evercrisp apples I put in other locations have done exceedingly well. This is one of those areas that we talked about in the past where the soil was beat up from the feet up, and we're going to see if we can bring this thing back. It's having a hard time. So we're going to put some right here. And like I said, we'll eventually make a tea to put on the leaves. But right now, this is our extract. And then one cool thing I see also, a little side note as far as the guild goes, you see climbing up this tree right now is that cowpea. It's trying to make its way up that tree. So there's your vine layer in that 7 layer. Folks, this is what's extraordinary. Is just like Dr. Wallach talked about, where the animals, when they know something is seriously bioactive, they know. And so they will drink tons of it. He will drink that entire bucket if I let him. And they do it all the time. Every animal that we have, if you put crystal clear, clean water in front of them and put this next to them, they will always choose the compost tea. Good boy. You know that's good for you, don't you? You're the greatest Pyrenees. All right, let's go get some work done. All right, here we are in the high tunnel. Like I said, this stuff is super potent, high powered. Here's where we got those potatoes the other day. Awful soil, right? We're not gonna leave it bare like this, but I'm gonna go ahead and hit it right now with some of this super potent stuff. This is what I was telling you the other day of how we're gonna transform it. Well, this is it right here. We can sit here and take some of our compost and dress the whole top of all these beds. But we're still, if you have limited compost and you know it's fantastic, if you do it right, this will make all the difference in the world. So we're going to go ahead and finish this out, and then we'll go on to the next spot. Okay, the last place we're going to use this, and like I said, we'll use it around the trees and everything. What we want in our pastures is about a 50-50 fungal to bacterial ratio within that soil. Right now, it's compacted, and some of it has some anaerobic organisms out there. It's not as awful as it ought to be, so we're still playing catch up. But here's one of the quick ways in which we can turn things around. Now, the most inefficient way of doing this is using a water can. But I got stuff I got to use up here. I've done all the trees. We've done a lot of the good stuff, and we're seeing incredible recovery. I mean, we already have really good things going as it was. Our guilds, our methods, everything else have panned out, but this is putting everything on steroids, and I'm not kidding when I say that. So the idea is the best way to do this would be, like I said, when it's as punchy as it is right now, 1 gallon would be equivalent for an acre. In this area here, we probably got about, I don't know, 6 acres right about in this area, not counting what's up the mountain. But here's what I'm trying to get at. The best way to go about this would be to go ahead and take that 550 gallon tank we got, make our mixture in that. And what we're going to do, and we'll show you that when we actually get it done. Thing is, the tank isn't cleaned out right now. We'll go ahead and get that tank squared away, get some good fresh water in there, put our mixture in it, and then we're going to basically use some means to basically irrigate this stuff so it can...
Sprinkler.
Yeah, sprinkler. We're going to use a sprinkler and basically irrigate all this stuff out here. So we'll get it down into the soil to the benefit of everything else that grazes this area. So it's doing good right now, but we're going to put it on steroids with these methods. So what we're going to do now is just, I guess there's really no need to watch this. I'm just going to use up what I got, basically back and forth, 2 feet between centers, get this stuff out of here, and we'll go up and look at what the actual numbers are on all of it. All right, so we got everything out, and we told you in the future the methods we'll use to be able to more widely distribute all this wonderful life that we're putting in the soil. But here's the tail of the tape. As far as bacterial biomass, all we need is 135 micrograms per gram. We got about 300. Now we're lower in the fungal biomass, and plus, frankly, we beat up a little bit of them. But remember, we put a lunch box in there with the fungal component, so where it gets where it's going, and now it's got a little bit of food to go ahead and get a handle on things. So it's right at the threshold at 135. I know that this seems Greek to a lot of folks out there. Another beautiful thing is that we got a lot of bacteria out there right now, but we have an enormous amount of protozoa, which is going to eat the bacteria, plus the bacteria feeding nematodes. We have double the number that's required, and very, very, very little of things like ciliates, and I mean, they're negligible what's in there. So the point being is that if you make really good compost, do all the things you know you're supposed to do to make that stuff, you want to maintain it. We cover a lot of this on Patreon. But if you want a lot more, go check out Soil Food Web and Dr. Ingham over there. Want to really give a big shout out over there, because all the things we were doing before, this is really confirmation through the testing that we're able to say good night. We were producing some really good compost, and now we have the ways to kick it in the right directions if it isn't absolutely perfect the way we'd like. So we're covering a lot of that stuff over on Patreon. But hey, y'all, remember, if you need anything from us, things that are, I mean, like this peach right here. I mean, we're not selling peaches, but we're selling the things around it that are going to help those peaches, like comfrey. We've shown you in numerous videos how we use that to help expand in a guild all these wonderful fruit trees and berries and nut trees and all these other things that we got going. So we're helping you out there in that regard. So yeah, if you need comfrey, we got it at the website. Bone sauce, world's best deer repellent. We put it on all these trees. Anything else you need, just check us out down below. Until next time, this is Billy from Perma Pastures Farm, where permaculture is my passion, and it's pretty awesome to have proof that it works. We'll see y'all next time.